Inside the hive mind, all about honeybees. The worker bees have many different roles to perform, and one of the most interesting is the Undertaker role. Ideally, when a bee is sick, it will fly away from the hive. Any bee that dies in the hive creates work for other bees. When this happens, it must be removed. Living bees release a special chemical that allows other bees to acknowledge them. Undertaker bees identify dead bees by the lack of the chemical and then remove them. Another job of the worker honeybee is to collect nectar to turn into honey. They find the nectar in flowers and then drink it. Inside a bee's stomach, the nectar's sugar is processed. The bee then travels back to the hive and passes the nectar down a chain of other worker bees. This removes water, preventing it from being infected with bacteria. With enough water removed, the nectar is reduced to honey, which is used to feed larvae. Interestingly, science has recently revealed that honeybees prefer nectar with some salt. We're not yet sure how salt could affect bees, but they sure find it delicious.
Hello everyone, we are bees and we're dancing and we're telling you where to go and what to do, but we're here right now and we're talking about bees, so we're dancing like bees, but we can't communicate like bees by dancing. And we both think that's a bad thing. Humans should become more like bees. We should be dancing more for information, not talking. What's this talking and reading and writing? That's so boring. We should dance for information. Imagine if you went into a job interview and they didn't ask you questions. They just made you dance.
That would be
I really want to work at your bank. And you're doing this. Well, bees do, because that's how they communicate. As we learn, we also learned that, like in many other groups of animals out there in the animal kingdom, the women do the hard work. The men don't do much, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They just mate.
They just mate with the queen bee and then they get killed or they die. Whereas the female bees are finding the honey, getting the honey, cleaning the hive, building the hive, fixing the hive, taking care of the babies. Oh my gosh, a woman's work is never done, even as a bee. So let's find out more about bees and about one of the most wonderful things about them. Well, one of the most wonderful things they make, honey. Anyways, let's get to the article. The worker bees have many different roles to perform. Remember, these are the female bees for the most part, so they have many different roles to perform. And one of the most interesting is the Undertaker role.
Undertaker.
An Undertaker take care of...
I think in American English we say mortician.
A mortician. Ooh, good word. Yeah, takes a person who takes care of dead bodies.
Oh yeah, 就是殡仪员、殡葬员。So 工蜂 worker bees 不同的角色要执行，最有趣的就是送葬者的角色。So what does she do?
Are we about to learn that honey is made from dead bee bodies? Is that what we're about to learn?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think
so they make the honey and then they take care of the dough. I thought we're turning one thing into the other thing there. We're not eating honey anymore. No, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Ideally, when a bee is sick, it will fly away from the hive. First of all, what do bees get? Do they get colds?
Maybe.
I don't know. Anyways, so when they get sick, they fly away from the hive. And again, in the animal world, often if a member of the community gets sick, it will leave the community or even be killed because they don't want the disease to spread. You know, I mean, they don't have medicine, so they have to protect themselves in a certain way. But sometimes they don't fly or they can't fly. Any bee that dies in the hive creates work for other bees. In the same way that if someone dies in your home, you don't just leave them there. You have to do something about it.
But that's very considerate of them.
Well, it is also healthy for them.
Yeah.
Right?
所以我们知道蜜蜂生病哦，它就会飞离这个蜂巢，因为任何在蜂巢里面死掉的蜜蜂，其他蜜蜂就要来收它，然后就 there will be more work.
And so how do they do that? It says when this happens, that's the body of the dead bee. When this happens, it must be removed. It must be be taken away and not just left there to spread disease or whatever. Living bees release a special chemical that allows other bees to acknowledge them.
Oh.
Interesting. So how do bees know that other bees are alive? Not just by looking at them or seeing them moving around, because they might not be moving around, they might just be relaxing. But there is a chemical that they release when they're alive. In the same way that I know you're alive if you're updating your social media. If you don't go on your social media for a month, I'll think, oh my God, what's happened to him? There's no sign of life there. Similar, but a little different for bees. It's much easier because they have a chemical to send out this information. What is a chemical? It's a chemical. It's something that is produced using chemicals. When you study chemistry, you're studying chemicals. They can be basic chemicals like elements, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon. We can combine those chemicals, like take 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen, wham, bang, you got water. How do we create that? Well, by using chemicals. So it's studying chemicals. Basically, all living things, and actually all things, are made of chemicals at a very, very basic level. And studying how those things work together, that is the science of chemistry. Here's the example sentence. The scientist had many chemicals in test tubes and bottles all around her laboratory. This person is probably a chemist, someone who uses chemicals to do chemistry.
So chemical 就是化学物质，这边是名词，当形容词就是一个化学的嘛，所以像化学反应 a chemical reaction，或 chemistry 有化学或两个人之间的互相吸引，比如说 the chemistry between the 2 stars makes the movie a pleasure to watch。那这边的 acknowledge 就是注意到，所以当这样子的情形发生哦，如果死掉蜜蜂没有移除的话，它们里面可能就会造成麻烦吧，所以活着的蜜蜂怎么判断谁死掉了呢？他们会释放特殊的化学物质哦。
All right, so all of a sudden there is a dead bee in the middle of the colony. No, this is not the beginning of a bee murder mystery movie. It's just life. So what happens when the bee dies in the colony and doesn't fly away? Well, these Undertaker bees, a type of worker bee, Undertaker bees identify dead bees by the lack of the chemical and then remove them. So that's exactly what happens. They go around and go, I don't smell the living smell from this thing. It's dead. Let's get it out of here because it's going to make us sick. That is how they identify whether the bee is alive or dead, by finding this chemical or not finding it if the bee has died. Let's talk about the word identify. And to identify is to be able to look at something, hear something, see something, and tell someone what it is. If you look at something and you know what it is, you have identified that. If I hold up a simple picture of a shark and you go, that's a shark, you have identified it. If I ask you what kind of shark, and then you say, oh, that's a black-tipped reef shark. Wow, you have really identified it. So that is basically what we're talking about. The ability to know something by either seeing it, by hearing it. You can identify the sound of your friend on the phone probably without knowing that they're calling you. Just from the sound of their voice, you know what it is in your brain. If I show you a picture of my cousin who you have never met, you would not be able to say, hey, that's your cousin. No, you would have no idea. You could identify that person as a man or a boy or something, but you don't know who they are. So you identify the things that you know, and it would be harder to identify things you don't know. Here's an example. People can do this. Can you identify what type of bird that is from the song it is singing? If it's a chicken, maybe. Anything else? Tough.
Identify 就是去认出，所以它的名词是什么 ？Identity 就是一个人的身份。比如说 ，The police are trying to discover the identity of the killer，或者是我们都会有的 identification，那个就是我们的 ID， 我们的身份证，或者它是有识别辨认的意思。所以这些送葬者蜜蜂就会借由死亡蜜蜂上面缺少的那种化学气味来辨认它们，然后就把它们移除了。
All right, back to the article. Another job of the worker honeybee is to collect nectar to turn into honey.
So nectar 就是花蜜的意思。我们文章中看到的片语 turn something into something 就是把什么变成什么。那当然今天中间加一个人也是 OK。所以工蜂的另一项工作呢是采集花蜜，并且把它制成蜂蜜。
They find the nectar in flowers and then drink it. So that's how they collect the nectar from the flowers. This is where things get weird. Inside a bee's stomach, the nectar's sugar is processed. So they don't do it in a honey factory, they do it in a honey tummy.
Yeah, it's cute.
Yes. And to process something is to treat something basic, something that you probably grow, for example, with food, and then you change it, you add things to it, you cook it. If you're cooking in your kitchen, you are processing food. I guess even if you're cutting up vegetables just for a cold salad, you're kind of processing food, but if you add sugar to it, and especially if you put it in a factory, run it through a bunch of machines, and then it ends up in a bag or a can, that food can be very processed. A lot of things have been done to it after it went from being natural into what it ends up being in the end. And with food, it often ends up being tasty, but not good for you if it's very processed. For example, when food is processed in a factory, salt, sugar, and fat are often added. It can often last longer on the shelves and look nice, but it's not as good for you.
所以 process 就是处理的意思在这边，但我们只消化一件艰难悲伤的事情也 OK 哦。比如说 give me some time to process what's going on， 给我一点时间吧，我需要消化一下这些事情哦。And also process can be used as a noun， 它可以当过程。比如说我们学习的过程就是 learning process。那我们看一个句子 ，Children's acquisition of their mother tongue is a long process。那我们在文章中看到的是呢，所以这些蜜蜂在花中找到花蜜。就把它喝掉，再从花蜜中的糖分呢，就会在蜜蜂的胃里面被加以处理，变成我们吃的蜂蜜。
All right, so our worker bees are out there collecting pollen from flowers, drinking it. It turns into sugar in their tummies, and then what? The bee then travels back to the hive and passes the nectar down a chain of other worker bees. So it gets processed by other members of the hive or the colony or the community.
So pass something down 就是把什么传下去，所以他们蜜蜂就会返回蜂巢，把花蜜传给其他的工蜂。
Why are they doing this? Well, this removes water, preventing it from being infected with bacteria. Interesting. So kind of like that. If you crush up a bunch of fruit and then put it in a pan and heat it, you will cook off the water, and the fruit and the sweetness will get stronger and stronger. And the water also will be something that can go bad, well, having all that water. And that's why we dry things, right? Dried meat will last for a long time because you've removed the water, preventing bacteria from growing. To prevent is to stop something from happening. You take some action, you do something, you know something bad could happen, something you don't want to happen. So first you do things to prevent it. That's why we wear seatbelts in cars and helmets on a motorcycle, so that if you have a crash, these things will hopefully prevent you from getting badly hurt, for example. Here's something else that can prevent you from a bad experience. The sunscreen should prevent you from getting a sunburn while at the beach, because no one wants a sunburn. And if you use it a lot, or if you go to the beach a lot, it could also prevent you from getting skin cancer, which is good.
对，所以 prevent 就是去预防哦 ，prevent something from happening 就是去防止什么事情发生。那么呢 ，prevention 这个字就是名词啊，所以比如说 doctors are aiming to concentrate more on prevention than cure.
And we also have the word bacteria. What is a bacteria? Well, I could give you a very, very long scientific description, but I will leave that for your science teacher because this is English class. A bacteria is basically a very small, simple organism, not really even an animal. It's very, very, very small. You need a microscope to see it. But when we think of bacteria, we think of those dirty things that can get on your hands, get in your body, make you sick. We wash our hands to get rid of bacteria. Generally, if you catch a sickness out there from people, you're either catching it from bacteria, which can come from things you touch, or it might be a virus, which people would cough out. Bacteria are kind of easier to stop because they're bigger, right? Viruses can be very, very small. Bacteria are definitely living things, whereas viruses are sort of half living, just mainly protein. science teacher will answer this question very well, but for us, it's simple to know. Bacteria are things that can make you sick, and we try to avoid them. For example, you should wash your hands after playing in the park. You might have picked up some bacteria from the dirt, which is possible.
So, 这个 bacteria 就是细菌哦，它是个复数，那它的单数形就是 bacterium。那么我们看到的 infect 就是感染 ，so be infected with something 就是被什么东西感染。那么我们讲不同种类的细菌，就是 different types of bacteria。所以呢，花蜜在工蜂之间传递的这种做法，可以去除掉这个水分，所以我们的花蜜就不会有这个细菌感染的问题哦。
That's right. And of course, when things in your fridge are going bad and starting to smell, that's also because bacteria is now growing on your cheese. You don't want to eat it. But if you remove water, that can help keep that food fresh for longer. That's what bees are doing. With enough water removed, the nectar is reduced to honey, which is used to feed larvae or little baby bees. And that's another reason I think honey, as long as you keep it covered and closed, it never goes bad. Ever. For like hundreds of years. I'm not sure I would eat 300-year-old honey, but the idea is it never gets bad because the water's been removed. Very, very interesting. We also have reduce here. To reduce is basically to get smaller, all right? So if you lose weight, you will be reducing your body weight, your body size. But we can also talk about doing this in an active way. As I said, if you're cooking things, you might reduce the amount of water inside that thing as it, comes off in steam. For example, place the soup over a medium heat for 10 to 12 minutes to reduce it, to make it from kind of watery soup to much thicker soup with a stronger, tastier flavor.
OK， 我们看到的 larvae 这边是复数，它是幼虫，它的单数形是 larva， 那么复数形也可以直接加一个 s 在后面就好 larvas。但是呢，很可怕 ，they're so scary to me. But right now we'll take a look at the next word, reduce. Reduce 这个字就是使液体变稠哦，那我们也常常用 reduce 这个字来形容煮饭的时候汤汁的变少。老师刚刚那个句子也就是有收汁的意思。我们再看一个 ，bring the sauce to a boil and then simmer for 10 minutes to reduce。那么 reduce 当减少的意思也可以，我们常常说要减少使用嘛 ，reduce。Reuse 多加利用就是再利用 and recycle 再回收 it's good for the environment 所以这个花蜜呢去除掉足够的水分就会变成蜂蜜会拿来喂养这些幼虫
All right, here's an interesting little fact that we've just learned. Interestingly, science has recently revealed that honeybees prefer nectar with some salt.
What?
Yeah, very interesting.
Okay.
So if they go to the movie theater, they like that mixed one, the salty and the sweet popcorn. They like both of those.
That's you.
No, that's not me. I'm a salty guy.
I know you're a salty guy, but your wife is more like a...
Yeah.
I'm the sweet.
We have separate popcorns. We're not yet sure how salt could affect bees, but they sure find it delicious. So there you go. Something we've just learned about bees. There is so much more to discover about these cool little insects.
所以有趣的是什么呢？蜜蜂居然喜欢含有盐分的花蜜哦。我们还不确定为什么这个盐分对蜜蜂有什么影响，不过他们觉得好好吃啊 It's pretty yummy.
It could be. I don't know. Should we put some salt on our honey next time
Maybe
we
we
have
can
it on
try.
toast? Yeah, who knows? Do you like to eat honey? Why or why not?
I do. I drink honey tea every day. It's good for my throat.
It's good for your throat. It is good for your throat.
It is.
Very good point. Yes, I like to have honey. I usually have 2 kinds of honey at home. Why am I holding up 2 fingers? 2 kinds of honey at home. One of them is a sweeter honey, and one of them is not so sweet that I use more for cooking.
Oh, okay. So they're both not real.
They're both absolutely. They're both real. I don't use plastic honey.
Of course not.
Yes, but I do find that sometimes when you use the sweet honey, it's good for desserts, but maybe too sweet if you're putting it on your chicken
so
or
cool.
Something like that. So there you go. Try it out. Experiment with honey. There are many kinds, and they actually do taste often like the flavors of the flowers they come from.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. You eat some honey? Do you eat honey or just drink it?
I
put it on toast?
I don't eat honey. I just drink it.
Too sweet. All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you back here soon. Until then, be well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Chemical. You need to wear gloves when handling these chemicals. They're not safe to touch. Identify. Susan was able to identify her friend in the crowd by his bright red hat. Process. This local farm collects fresh milk and processes it to make butter and cheese every day. Prevent. The doctor told me that this medicine would help prevent the illness from making me feel worse. Bacteria. Before you eat, you should wash your hands with soap to remove the bacteria on them. Reduce. When making jam, you need to boil the fruit mixture over low heat and allow it to reduce.
智慧小补帖
Undertaker. Acknowledge. Nectar. Infect. Larvae.